to the
Okay, so especially when it comes to guys like me who started out skinny, very naturally lean, lanky, have trouble putting on weight, the two main goals that people want for the most part are gaining strength and building muscle. And I want to preface this entire video by saying it is 100% possible to do both, especially when you're starting out and you have your newbie gains. It's very much easy to gain strength, it's easy to gain muscle, and you can build a decent physique as well as lifting some pretty impressive numbers. But with that being said, there are of course ways that you can hyper focus on one aspect, whether it's getting stronger or building muscle, and in this video I'm going to explain what those are, how you can do it. I'm going to use my own example because even though I'm not as big or strong as the examples that I just showed in the clips at the start of the video, I did train primarily to build muscle at the start of my journey, and now, as you might have seen if you kept up with any of my videos, I'm transitioning into powerlifting. I'm training to build strength and to be able to lift some heavy fucking weight. Alright, so the first thing we're going to touch on is rep ranges. When it comes to hypertrophy, it's a bit more subjective when it comes to rep ranges. However, the main point here is that there is no rep range that you necessarily have to stay in. You can get plenty of muscle growth from as low as 6 to 8 reps or as high as 20 to 30. Now, of course, muscle building is all about time under tension. That's how you get your muscles to grow. So going into those higher rep ranges with more slow, controlled reps is more times than not going to yield better results, especially if you're using lighter weight, less risk of injury. However, the main thing is that you go into failure, you make sure you really tear that muscle. Because one thing a lot of people don't realise is that your muscles can't count. You know, your muscles don't care that you're doing 3 sets of 10 each time. They're going to be like, oh, that's consistent, that's great. Well, I'm glad he hit that 3 sets of 10, let's keep growing now. Your muscles just know how much damage they're being put through and then how to repair. So the bottom line is, rep ranges do not matter that much for muscle building. However, as I said before, there are like ballparks that could be considered optimal or suboptimal. However, the case cannot be said for strength training because it is pretty much unanimously agreed upon that when it comes to strength training, the ideal rep range are lower rep ranges. Rarely anything higher than 8 reps, maybe under specific circumstances depending on your program you'll go higher than that, but a lot of the time just because you're trying to get your CNS used to that weight, you're trying to teach your body how to deal with heavy weights for when you eventually do go for those PRs and you do try to max out. It's a lot more about lower rep ranges. I'm talking anywhere from heavy singles, which is just 1 rep, doubles, all the way up to sets of 6. I'll throw up a video of me now. I just started the second block of my powerlifting program, and as my top set, relatively low intensity just because again we're at the start of the block. But I was doing a squat for only 2 reps, and to a lot of people that's pointless. Like, what can you get out of 2 reps? But that's the difference between strength training and muscle building.
Push, hey, push, yeah, keep going, kill me.
It's now the next day because my bedroom's lighting wasn't doing me any favours, so I wanted to wait till the morning, the natural light. Okay, so the second thing I'm going to talk about is intensity. It's no secret, a lot of people advocate it. Training to failure, training with a very high intensity is what you need to do to build muscle, to make gains, and to really tear that muscle so it can grow back bigger and stronger. And that's pretty much the case when it comes to bodybuilding, hypertrophy, muscle building. You want to be going as intense as possible. Not necessarily in every set. You know, it can be argued that you don't need to go to failure. There's a lot of science behind it. I personally don't know about that. When I'm trying to build muscle, I'm an advocate of going as hard as you can. Safely, of course, you know, not injuring yourself, but for the most part, training as hard as possible. Now again, this doesn't apply whatsoever to strength training, mainly because you don't want to fatigue, you don't want to fry your central nervous system, because you're going to be doing these heavy compound lifts all the time, sometimes 2 up to 3 times a week per lift. And most of the time you're going to be handling heavy weights. So in a lot of powerlifting programs, you'll hear this term thrown about in the fitness industry, but you might not know what it means. And that term is RPE. Now RPE stands for rate of perceived exhaustion, and essentially it's a scale of 1 to 10. In the simplest terms possible, the highest RPE, RPE 10, is a complete max out. It would be impossible for you to get any more reps. RPE 9, maybe 1 more rep, and so on and so forth. Most powerlifting programs, especially towards the start of the block, utilize an RPE 6 range where it's a pretty comfortable weight. It'll have like the tiniest bit of struggle on the last rep, but pretty much it's a weight that you know you can do, and it's a set that you're confident is going to be completely fine. And this is simply, so you can work on form again, so you don't fry your CNS, because that's one of the worst things you can do. And then gradually, as the program goes on, you're likely to increase in RPE, but very, very rarely going above that 8 range, possibly pushing 9, on certain occasions when you're trying to test out your maxes or just trying to go for heavy singles. So yeah, in short, if you want to gain strength, it is absolutely a bad idea to be maxing out all the time, going to complete failure, because all that's going to happen is you're going to plateau, you're going to stop making gains, and we all want to make gains, so. Recovery, in my opinion, is a massively neglected factor when it comes to training, and although there are some differences between strength training and muscle building, the same principles apply to both. And that is that in order to make progress, you must be getting the sufficient amount of rest. You are, of course, breaking down your muscles in the gym, but the actual growth of the muscle happens later on during recovery, hence its major importance. Now again, this is very much a subjective topic, but when it comes to muscle building, one of the main indicators to know when you should be resting is just responding to how your body feels. If your muscles are sore, it's kind of a no-brainer that you shouldn't go in and hammer them again the next day. Of course, this does depend on whatever muscle you're training for and whatever muscle is currently in recovery. Smaller muscles like the biceps and the triceps can handle more frequency as long as you're not absolutely tearing them off the bone every single set. Whereas, a chest workout, especially a leg workout, I'm sure you all know how it feels 2 days after leg day. You definitely do not want to be going in and hitting some heavy squats after that. They're going to need a lot more recovery. This doesn't really apply to strength training because, like I said, if you're staying within that lower RPE range, you're not really going to be sore most of the time. This, of course, doesn't include any accessories you might be doing, but then again, they're also likely to be within the RPE 8 to 9 range, nothing that should keep you sore for days. But the main thing with strength training, at least in my opinion, I don't think you should be training any more than 2 times in a row. Maybe 3 times, but that in my opinion is the absolute maximum, simply because, as I mentioned in the last part, CNS fatigue. You really don't want to be plateauing at any point, and so you want to make sure you've got ample recovery time so you can make ample strength progress. In my opinion, there aren't really any set exercises that you need to do in order to build muscle. Obviously, there are unanimously agreed upon exercises that are more optimal, that are more efficient when it comes to building muscle, that are safer especially, compared to others that people kind of just make up and post on TikTok for views. The main point is you need to pick something that works good for you. If you find an exercise that you find is, really comfortable, it's getting you good progress, it's making gains, by all means, do it as much as you want. Always integrate it into your routine. On the contrary, just because a lot of people on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok say this is the best exercise to build whatever muscle, if you do it and you don't enjoy it, you find it uncomfortable, and especially if it's not making any progress for you, cut it out. There's no need for you to do it. The same could technically be said for strength, but that's only if you're just trying to generally build strength. In this case, I'm more referring to people who want to increase their squat, bench and deadlift, and you should do squat, bench and deadlift as frequently as possible. Like I said, 2, sometimes even 3 weeks. I'd personally recommend doing bench press 3 times a week, but squat and deadlift, keep it at 2. Maybe you could increase it, but just because it's a lot more of a taxing exercise compared to the bench, I'd personally leave it at 2 times per week. Of course, you can't just leave it at those exercises and call it a day. You want to come in and do your accessories so you can get some muscle growth, but as well, there are some movements that can complement those other compound lifts, and so by doing these movements you can actually indirectly increase your squat, bench and deadlift total. These include things like doing RDLs to increase your deadlift, using certain squat machines such as maybe the hack squat in order to increase your squat, and doing other heavy compound pressing movements to increase your bench, including incline bench press and overhead press. You should also aim to add some variety to your squat, bench and deadlift throughout the week. Like, just because you do bench press 3 times a week doesn't mean that you have to come in and just bench press 3 times a week. My coach has got me on a program where the first time I'm benching, I'm doing a tempo bench, in which case I'm coming down for 3 seconds, pausing for 2 seconds, and then exploding up. The second time I'm benching, I've got a 3 count bench where the pause at the bottom lasts for 3 seconds, and then at the very end of the week is when I'm doing my standard competition bench, down, pause for a second, and press back up. The same applies for squats. You can easily do pause squats, just stopping at the bottom. Deadlifts, pause deadlifts, stopping about an inch off the floor. You can add a lot of variety to deadlifts as well. You can do block pulls, putting your deadlifts on blocks and then lifting from there. Rack pulls, you can also do deficit deadlifts, in which you start on a plate or a platform of some kind, and it slightly increases the range of motion. Another thing is, especially if you're training to compete, you want to make sure that all your movements, you're going through the full range of motion, you're locking out on every movement, and you're reaching depth on squat, you're reaching lockout on deadlifts, and you're touching your chest on the bench press. Now on social media, you'll see a lot of people complaining when people are posting about, muscle building, how to gain muscle, they're doing exercises. And a lot of people say, oh, that's half reps, you can't be doing that. But honestly, if you really think about it, it could in some cases be suboptimal to use the full range of motion. For example, on a dumbbell shoulder press, if you're going all the way down to here and then locking out, sure, you're getting the full rep, it counts as a rep. Whereas if you're going down to about here and then stopping just before lockout, you're keeping constant tension on your shoulder. More time under tension, as I said earlier, means better muscle growth, as well as it can, prevent injury. Like, we all know what happens and why you shouldn't lock out on leg press. Yeah, the main takeaway here is that just because you're changing the rep ranges and everything, you need to think about the actual exercises you're doing and how they can either help you gain muscle or help you gain strength. And I think that those are the 4 major things that you need to think about when differentiating between strength training and muscle building. There may have been some things I missed, and I'm sure that at some point in the future, when I'm a lot more knowledgeable and I've made more progress myself, I'll do an update on this video. But for now, I really do hope that it did help in some capacity. I hope that you can use these tips to either gain strength or gain muscle. And if you did enjoy, find this video informative or helpful, please feel free to like, comment and subscribe. And maybe check out some of my other videos and stay tuned for the videos that are to come in the future. So as usual, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.